According to the Walt Disney Company, Percy Jackson is the biggest premiere in the history of the entire world. What we want to talk about today, though, is a quick review of the first 3 episodes, which are now out, and also an interesting rewriting or maybe return to the original myth of Medusa and how she might be subjugated into being empowered for the message. Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell. I'm an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and of course, I'm the guy who runs this channel, so I get to be here for almost everything we record. With me today is a fellow That Park Place writer, Mr. Martin Stone. Martin, glad to have you here.
Happy to be here.
And joining me is one of my favorite contributors to That Park Place, the channel, and the queen of all of Florida, in my opinion, Miss LaReinaCreole. Lorena, so glad to have you on a discussion video here on this channel. You doing all right today?
Yeah, I'm doing great, doing wonderful, and so glad to be here with the both of you.
Glad to have you. So I asked everybody if they wouldn't mind watching the first few episodes here of Percy Jackson. I know that I watched the first movie with Logan Lerman of Percy Jackson, and it was kind of a response to Harry Potter, but with more of a Greek mythology theme as opposed to witches and wizards and all of that. I like the first one. I cannot remember if I watched the second one. Obviously you've all seen the show at this point, but have you watched the movies?
I have not.
Yeah, I did. I watched both of them. My wife's cousins were big fans when they were kids.
And I think this is one that I think Percy Jackson was maybe with Hyperion. I forget who originally had the rights to the books, but it was something where it was kind of a shoe-in for Disney to get the rights because they were already associated with the publisher. I may not be right about that, so let's not focus on that too much here. But quick thoughts, though. What's your gut reaction? Is this a show that do you think will draw more people into Disney Plus and now, of course, Hulu?
Well, I would say yes. For those, I know for myself as a kid, I was obsessed with Greek mythology, and even if you're not familiar with the Percy Jackson series, the movies, or even the books, the series is written in such a way, surprisingly well, that if you did not read the books at all, you get a great ground floor introduction into who Percy Jackson is, why we should care who he is, and all of the world building with that. So I think it's actually got a very, very, very good chance.
I'm always looking for something for my my boys to watch. One of them's a teenager, one of them's a little preteen, and a good fantasy adventure show is exactly the sort of thing I want them to be watching. And so I think this is it positions Disney well in that market if they can reach them.
This one's not bad. Of course, the question that we always get is it woke? And I would say there's no weird gender ideology stuff in it so far. Of course, I have an eye for trying to find these things, and I didn't see anything off of the bat. There's a couple.
Unless you want to count the Oracle's avatar in the second episode.
Yeah. Talk more about that.
Percy Jackson goes to the Oracle before his quest, and it's this shrunken, decayed, female-looking form. But then when it comes to life, it's a man, and it's a man he knows, who's sort of part shouting at him and part telling him what's going to happen on his quest. It's a little odd, but I wouldn't exactly say it's gender bending.
No, it was more of I would say the thing that you would expect the least, that just emotionally throws you off, the most. So I thought it was kind of funny. At the same time, it kind of, in a way it did make sense.
Right. 5-10 years ago, if this happens, nobody questions it. Now, because of Disney touching on these things so often, now it's like, are they sliding this in? What's going on here?
Right.
Yeah. I gets raised a little bit, but when it turned out to be who it was, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, it was a good bit though. That I think that all is forgiven if it's a good bit, right? So the only things I notice, and these aren't things that I would even call woke in the modern sense of the word. There's no weird ideology here. There's obviously some race changing with the casting, but the one thing I did notice on that front is all of the harpies are white women. Uh, but or whatever those things are. But Megan Mullally does a great job playing this evil
Oh, the Furies?
creature. Yeah, the Furies. Sorry,
Mhm.
sorry. And it's been a long time since I've looked up the taxonomy there for Greek creatures, but I had assumed they were harpies. But y'all help me out if I mislabel something here. I noticed that they were all white women, but that is also not something that I think I would have cared about if I wasn't looking for this kind of thing. So I don't want to jump at shadows. I think, other than the issue that we'll talk about in just a moment, most of the white female characters are not good people. But I don't think that really should affect anything unless you're looking for it in the larger picture. Good or bad, like what do you guys like about the show, not like about the show? Where do you think that the show shines?
That's a very good question. I would say with the strength of the storytelling, in the first episode, you are emotionally invested very quickly in who Percy Jackson is, the relationship he has, with his mother, the difficulties that he's having in school. And that's kind of like how to get that young adult market, coming up with situations that they can relate to. I thought the relationship between him and his mother
Hmm.
was actually portrayed very well, especially given what happened to her.
Hmm.
Um, in the next episode, not only just what happened to her, but just with the setup that she was doing. And frankly, I didn't see what was coming until all this exposition came out of nowhere. And you realized, she did know what was going on with him and was doing everything that she possibly could to protect him. So I thought that was written very well. I also thought the special effects were done
Hmm.
very well, as well. The creatures looked mythological. They didn't look like they were half rendered, or anything like that. And the plot kept you guessing from episode to episode. I joked that I said, "Oh, I'll watch this, while I'm doing my nails." So my barometer is if I'm doing my nails and I'm actually paying more attention to the story than to what I'm doing, it's actually a pretty good show. And that's what I did with this one here.
Hmm. Martin, do you have any comment there?
Yeah, I feel like one of the things the show does well is you don't get overly invested in characters that don't matter. A lot of TV shows will throw a whole lot of characters at you, and you lose track of who's doing what and why. This one stays pretty focused on
Hmm.
its mission. Uh, that's getting rare in TV these days.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. One thing
Mhm.
that I like very much about the interplay with him and his mom, and I don't like the idea of a character with unusual parentage. It's a little harder for the younger generations the very younger ones to understand. Well, where's her dad? If this isn't his dad, then who is this and that? So I don't like the idea of the mom staying with a loser. Just it also bothers me as a person because I'm rooting for the mom
Yeah.
and her staying with this waste of space. But also, they did a good job in the show. Sorry, in the show of portraying that this guy is a total waste of space, and um, that Percy knows that he's a waste of space without having him be too disrespectful to this guy who is staying in the same place as his mom. Although they don't really go into all of that.
The movie explains a bit more about why she's with this guy, and
Hmm.
it's kind of a shade to keep Percy off the radar
Right.
of the demigods and gods and monsters and things.
Yeah. So one of the good things that I do see in this, the way they tell these stories is most of the kids that end up. I'm going to spoil one aspect of this that is kind of in the title. Percy Jackson is a demigod. He's a child of a god, and is a lowercase g, little gods. If he was supposed to be the child of the uppercase G god, we'd be having a completely different conversation.
Yeah, totally.
So, and he has dyslexia, or what seems like dyslexia, but what it actually is that his brain is hardwired for Greek. And so there's a lot of spinning these things about him being different in the world are actually his strengths in a different aspect that he just has not discovered yet. And that's a very hopeful message. And I really like that message in children's media, that, sometimes your struggles now are something that is setting you up for success in a way that you just haven't perceived yet. I like that a lot. And that's a good message. One of the things that I want to talk about is an article out of Variety. Another message that they're putting into this that raises my eyebrow just a little bit. This one, how Percy Jackson updated the book's Medusa storyline to get closer to the original myth. She was a victim, and you can read the screen, by Salome Hailu. This character, by the way, Medusa in the last version was played by Uma Thurman, and they played it a little differently. The design wasn't as interesting. I think she had some weird goggles on because she was supposed to be kind of a crafty, kind of a welder type or something like that, to where you kind of see her, you kind of don't. But right off the bat, I'll say I love this design because you can see her eyes, but it still gives them this idea that you can't see her eyes.
Agreed. This is what really impressed me when I first saw it. How she talked, how she moves, but just how her eyes were hidden. So I thought kudos to them for the costuming and how they went about doing this.
So spoiler alert, if anyone doesn't want to be spoiled on episode 3, well, here's your warning. Come back and watch this later. For fans of Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson and the Olympians books, Medusa represents one of Percy's first big victories. After being tricked into spending time with Auntie M, he beheads the snake-haired woman, and her cursed dead eyeballs are later used to turn another enemy into stone. But for those with deeper knowledge of Greek mythology, and for many women, Medusa is a symbol of something darker. This is where they're getting into something that there's actually some debate about. In the original myth, Medusa is a woman who takes a vow of celibacy out of devotion to Athena, the goddess of wisdom. However, Medusa eventually enters into a relationship with the sea god Poseidon that becomes more intimate one night. Poseidon, in this case, again, spoilers for episode 3, we're already past it. Poseidon is the father of Percy Jackson. He's supposed to be some equivalent to Perseus. They haven't quite explained how Percy relates to Perseus, the one who beheaded Medusa in the original myth. Many interpretations posit that the encounter, which took place on Athena's temple, was non-consensual, and that Poseidon had unwilling relations with Medusa. Athena decides to punish Medusa, robbing her of her beauty by turning her into a gorgon that petrifies anyone who she makes eye contact with. The story ends with the demigod Perseus, who Percy Jackson is named after, decapitating Medusa and gifting her head to Athena. Whew. Any reactions to that quickly before we move on?
Well, I mean, how deep you want to get into it? Because
I'm a
pretty big fan of mythology.
Yes. How common is this interpretation? I'm not saying it's an impossible interpretation, but how common would you say this interpretation is?
I'd say if you took your 7th grade English and they taught mythology, they breeze over this as a possibility. If you took it and if you got your Greek mythology in high school or college, then this is the way it's presented, that she's a victim of a very personal crime.
When I got into mythology, I specifically remember being in the 5th grade of my elementary school and finding the mythology book and reading through. But I don't remember interpreting this from here, but maybe I had not had the talk that would make me understand all of that.
I know I personally, that wasn't the version that I had learned. Yes, that there was a encounter of a sexual nature in the temple. However, the infraction against Athena was pretty much, how dare you have the audacity to do this in my temple? And that's why she was cursed. So that was the mythology that I read and that I had heard of.
Right.
The other thing about it being non-consensual, this is like news to me.
So there is this isn't just them saying, okay, we want to make it into this, and so we're forcing it. They're taking an aspect here. They're focusing on a specific aspect. I think, does that sound like a reasonable interpretation?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's right.
So as we see here, Disney Plus, and now airing on Disney Plus, the Gorgons' relationship with the kids' parents gets unpacked with more depth. And having seen the episode, yeah, I would say that they make it a little bit more interesting this time around. Rebecca Reardon, notice that this is Reardon's wife and not himself, who is married to Rick and the executive producer of the TV series, says that the only reason Medusa is not more fleshed out in the books was that it was Percy's narrative and we don't have her perspective, as the books were written in first person. As a 12-year-old boy in 2005, I don't think he had the bandwidth for deconstructing the patriarchy. Oh, there we go. There we go.
And I'm triggered.
Yeah.
And the reason that I say that I'm triggered is because this is pretty much the same situation like what Disney did with Maleficent. Maleficent was a badass OG villain, unrepentant. That's why people liked her so much. And Disney decided to turn her into someone who should be understood. Don't you understand what she's gone through, what the patriarchy has done to her? And I see them doing the same thing to Medusa, who had no problem killing people, with one look. And it's like they're making her more of a victim instead of a villain to be overcome.
We see her yard. She's massacred. If turning people into stone kills them, then she's a mass murderer.
And serial killer too.
Yeah. So sorry, go ahead, Martin.
So if they're looking to deconstruct the patriarchy with this character, they're doing a really, really poor job. They set it up that way in the first episode when the mom is talking to Percy, and he's looking at a famous statue of Perseus holding the Gorgon's head.
Yes.
And he talks about her being a monster, and the mom's like, well, is she a monster? What about perspective?
Right. So here we go with that. But that changed upon entering a TV writer's room. Oh, the greatest place to be, to tell the truth, right? Where other perspectives become essential. It was one of the first things we talked about. Oh, that's great. How not to have a patriarchal lens. Medusa is first mentioned in the pilot episode when Percy, where his mother, Sally, takes her young son to New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art and shows him Antonio Canova's early 1800s statue of Perseus holding Medusa's severed head. Not everyone who looks like a hero is a hero, and not everyone who looks like a monster is a monster. And this is the part where I take issue with Disney lately. They have almost an obsessive focus on gray morality, that there are no heroes, there are no villains, there are only people trying to achieve goals. And I dislike this aspect the absolute most. I don't think it's going to come through in the end, because I don't think that they've achieved what they want to achieve here. I'm going to say the word hate the idea of children's entertainment trying to make all of the bad guys into good guys that have just been misunderstood.
Right, but that's where I'm saying they fail, because that's in the first episode. But then when we actually meet Medusa, she's a seductress who is tempting them with food, tempting them with a shortcut on their journey, and in the end they stand up to that and they end up killing her. But she is not the victim that I thought Disney was going to make her be. If anything, it's a hurt people sort of storyline.
Right, I agree with that. And any attempt here to make this person, again, who has an entire yard littered with corpses, if you're following Stone as dead people. And by the way, the other character that's with them, she is supposed to be Athena's daughter. So you have an oppressor, and then the woman who decided to punish Medusa, both of their children here. And plus, by the way, Medusa killed one of the character's fathers, or uncle Grover. Grover's dead. What is his name? Ferdinand.
His uncle. Yeah, his uncle Ferdinand. Yeah.
So, we're all supposed to be here and understand why she did what she did. She was holding on to her power. It reminds me of the end of WandaVision, where Tiana Paris's character looks at Wanda and who has just enslaved and tortured a town full of people. and she says, "They will never understand what you gave up." It just, I really don't like this continual return to villains having some kind of point or justification for hurting people, or in fact doing atrocities onto innocent people. This is a kid's show. I don't want them taking the lesson here that the ends justify the means, or that if someone does something horrible, maybe there was something in their past that made it more understandable. Ouch.
Well, Jonas, I'll add one thing, that if there was ever a point where I was about to turn the television off, that line was it. With
Yep.
not everyone who looks like a hero is a hero, and not everyone who's a monster is a monster. It's like, come on. It's not all gray. There's black, there's white, there's villains. Villains should be unrepentant. That's exactly what they should be. But you want to go in this gray area where it's, you just need to understand. We just need to understand the villain.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
it's really tiring.
So
I would. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I want to read this last. This is the monologue that Medusa gives, which is supposed to make everyone understand what was going on here, and then we'll wrap up. Athena was everything to me. I worshipped her. I prayed to her. I made offerings. She never answered, not even an omen to suggest that she appreciated my love, Medusa says. Then, correctly assuming that Annabeth isn't as close to her mother as she'd like to be, she adds, "I wasn't like you, sweetheart. I was you. I would have worshipped her that way for a lifetime, in silence. But then one day another god came and he broke that silence. Your father," she continues, now speaking to Percy, "the sea god told me that he loved me. I felt as though he saw me in a way I had never felt seen before. But then Athena declared that I had embarrassed her and I needed to be punished. Not him, me. She decided that I would never be seen again by anyone who would live to tell the tale." Man, I just, what are you doing, Disney, here? What are we doing that we want to put this theme into a kid's show, that we want to prep them very early on that there's an entire aspect of the system that is rigged against an entire demographic? Martin, I want to give you the chance to talk, and then I want to give Lorena final thoughts here. Martin, what were you about to say?
Well, I was going to say that the Greek myth is really complex, because it's people forget or are never taught that Medusa is herself the children of two gods, two primordial gods that predate the Olympians, but she happens to be mortal. Her sisters are immortal. So all of this is not humans doing anything to each other. These are all gods doing things to each other. So that feminist parallel kind of breaks down when you reach that level.
I'll add one thing that I did not like, and I wanted to bring this up. Why is it seems the majority of the bullies in this are girls?
Whew, that's a good point. Yeah, Dior Goodjohn plays a character that is a child of Ares, and she is the entire reason. She's a girl in the books, which I don't know if they're trying to make some statement about Perseus being weak as far as masculinity goes or what. But yeah, she is the one that tortures Perseus, and I'm going to say she gets pretty close to actually killing him.
Yeah.
And if he didn't end up having superpowers in that second episode, he probably would have died. So yeah, I don't like the way that they portray that character at all. But of course, she is supposed to be a villain. I did not like that one bit. So if this is all supposed to be making statements about oppression, I really don't like that, because I feel that might contribute to the idea that we all need to be divided. We need to see our immutable characteristics. It's just funny. We're ending this way on a show that we've all said it's fine for kids, but as we're looking at the larger themes, the things that might abide, maybe we're not liking this show as much as we originally stated we did.
I would say I like the show, but I'm seeing things that cause me concern, and it depends on how they wrap things up. We'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Now, the thing that I will say to anyone watching this who has any confusion about whether or not you can watch this or let your kids watch this, I think you can watch this, and I think your kids can watch this. But as I would always encourage you, talk about what your kids are watching with them. Maybe even watch it with them. And if you don't like it,
Yes.
maybe find something else that you can watch together. One of the most important things you can do as a family is participate in each other's lives and try, even if you don't like the things that everybody likes, to try to be there and put down your phone and focus together on one thing and then talk about it. One of the things that great stories can do is bring us together and give us commentary on life. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Everybody go check out Lorraine's channel. She does excellent live streams of the theme parks. She has a diversity of content over there. And she's got a great presence, and we're glad to have her on That Park Place as often as we can get her. Martin is a writer for That Park Place and does excellent opinion pieces over there. So please go check those out over on thatparkplace.com. And of course, like this video. If you like this video, consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.